Hi everyone, it's me Alicia with Crafting with Creepsakes. I am extremely excited to do the ice cream cone themed tumbler. I've had this idea like running through my brain for quite some time and I just needed to execute it. It was really starting to rack my brain. So I'm really excited with the results that I achieved, and I am extremely overwhelmed with gratitude for all the positive feedback that I received on this tumbler. So I'm really looking forward to sharing how to make this tumbler, and let's just go ahead and jump right in and get started. So before I get started, let me just throw out there that any material and or companies that I mentioned throughout this tutorial, I am not a paid affiliate. This is all just personal product that I like to use while making my tumblers. I will definitely list all the product that I use in the description box below, and I will also post it on the Facebook post as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today I'm going to be using a 20-ounce skinny Maars tumbler. I have a bunch of these left over, so I just want to kind of get rid of these, but you can use any size tumbler you wish. I'm also using spoon flour, waffle cone, or ice cream cone fabric. And before I work with my fabric, I like to heat press it for just a few seconds just to get any possible moisture that's trapped in the fabric. So I've already done that. And this is just scrap left over, so I'm just going to work with this. But pretty much what I do is with this size, I do fold it in because we're only going to concentrate from the middle down, okay? We're not going to worry about the top part. So I'm just going to fold it in because it is a little long. And this is going to help me determine how much fabric I want. I also like to leave about a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch of fabric here, and I concentrate on the bottom. So I lay it down and I'm just going to roll it. And the reason why I like to concentrate on the bottom, because once you flap the material over and you start to roll it, you'll start to figure out how much material you need to overlap. And this helps because you can see the bottom, you can see the first overlay here, and then you can tell how much material you're going to have to overlap. So I like about a good inch, maybe just a little, about 1.5 inches, little under an 1.5 inches, sorry. So this is actually pretty good. And as far as the middle part of it, from the down, I want about that much icing. So this is good. Actually, this worked out really well. Okay, so after I make that fold, it gives me a crease, and this is where I know I need to cut. So it works out. Just gives you a guideline. You don't have to worry about the straightness of the top portion of your waffle cone because it's going to get covered up with the icing. Okay. So now that that's done, you can make your ice cream cone as short as you want, as tall as you want. Doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. For this case, I do like to go a little bit higher because it is a tall skinny and we're doing just a 1 scoop. I am working on a double scoop ice cream as well, so I can't wait to get that out there. And that looks good. Perfect. Okay, so now that I have that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to Modge Podge. So let me go ahead and get that set up. Okay, so I got my Modge Podge little station ready. I like to put my Modge Podge in a squeeze bottle. It's just easier to work with, and then I have my brush. So let me go ahead and let's just go and get started. So pretty much all I'm gonna do right now is just start spreading that Modge Podge around on the bottom portion of your tumbler. You can use any brush you want, a foam brush or, you know, a regular paintbrush. I like to use a paintbrush just for this particular tumbler, or at least when just applying fabric. You want to work a little fast because this stuff starts to dry really quickly. Okay. And you're just going to lay it down. Remember, give yourself about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of material to work with. And just kind of roll it halfway, just to give you a start. Okay. I don't own the rights to this music. I just have music playing in the background because I have my turners, my tumbler turners spinning, and they just make a weird funky noise. So I just trying to mask that noise. So sorry guys. So now that you just kind of applied your fabric, you're just gonna now go over it with Modge Podge. I'm gonna give this just one coat, a really good coat. And then I'm gonna let it dry completely and then go over it with another coat. I'm gonna do 2 coats and then I'm going to cut my fabric and get those straight lines that we need. But you wanna get a really good coating on your fabric before you make the cut, because if you don't, you can get, I guess they're called like fabric frays, which is pretty much, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's this right here. Those little frays. And when you apply good coats of Modge Podge, it's going to create, your fabric's going to become almost like a paper mache consistency, or like it becomes almost like plastic, and that prevents those little frays from happening. But I'm not worried about that fray because it's going to get covered. See how it starts to dry? Okay. And you just got to work fast. The whole point is just to give this a really good coat and bring it all the way to the edge. You want this to harden as well because we eventually will be cutting this down when we work on the bottom part of the tumbler. Give yourself a little lip here, guys, because we are going to lift this up later on. Right now we're just focusing on getting a really good coat on this. Try not to leave any streaks. Bring it all the way to the edge. Again, we're just going to give this 2 coats. I'm going to let this first coat dry really well, and then when I come back, I'll already do, oh my goodness, I will already have done the second coat, and then we'll work on the cuts. So now that we're getting to the other side of the fabric, you just kind of want to give it a light coat. It's going to get pressed down, but we're going to lift that right now because we don't want it to get stuck to the fabric, because we need this, the second overlap lifted. I'll show you what I mean by that. Just want to get a good coat. Okay. So what I mean is you just want to lift it. Okay. And then you're just going to let it dry. Let this first coat dry, and then I'm going to do the same process, do the second coat, and then when I come back, we're going to work on the cuts and getting these lines straight. All right, guys, I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, now that I have my 2 coats of Modge Podge, my very first 2 coats of Modge Podge, I'm now going to go ahead and work on the seam of the fabric to get a straight line. And all you're going to need is electrical tape, or you could use painter's tape, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to just go ahead and cut a piece of the electrical tape. You just want it longer than the fabric itself. Okay. The 2 coats, it gives the material like a plastic feel, and this is what you want. This is going to help prevent any frays that you could get while cutting your fabric. Okay. I'll pull this back a little bit. And I want to make sure that this is going to cover. Okay. So all you want to do is just get your whatever tape you decide to use, and you just want to lay it on your fabric as straight as possible in a vertical I guess like kind of lining. Just want to make it as straight as you possibly can. Actually, I want to bring it a little bit closer to the edge. You just have to eye it and make sure that your tape is straight as possible. Kind of has something like this, okay? And then all you're gonna do is follow, the tape is just a guideline to help give you a straight cut. That's all you're using the tape for. It's just a guideline. Okay, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and make that cut. Go ahead, peel that off, and you get yourself a straight cut. Okay, now that you have that side, okay, now that you have that side, you're gonna go ahead and work on the other side. Okay, just to give yourself a nice cut. And you're gonna do the exact same thing. Just wanna line it up. Or not line it up, you want to just lay your tape down in a vertical position. Give yourself a straight line, or lay it down as straight as possible. Again, you're just using your tape as a guideline to cut a straight line on your fabric. Okay, something like that. Okay. Six to 8 coats. Just depends on how I'm feeling on it. I'm going this side. I think I like this cut better. Okay. There you have it. Now you have your straight line. Actually, I like this side better. And now you're just going to go ahead and Modge Podge it. The whole reason why you want to give your fabric about 6 to 8 coats. If you don't give your fabric really good coating of Modge Podge, what will happen is, or what can happen is, you will get what's called oil streaks or oil spots in your fabric. And it happened to this tumbler that I worked on a while back ago. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's like these oil spots here. See that? That's because I did not apply enough Modge Podge. And that's what we don't want. So applying anywhere from 6 to 8 coats will prevent that from happening. So it's very important that you coat your fabric 6 to 8 times and let each coat dry completely before applying your next layer of Modge Podge. I said I was going to go this way, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so now I'm just going to flap these over. And you're just going to get in there and lay it down. Oops, forgot I wanted to go this side first. Okay. My setup here. I just want to show you how we get these pieces down here, just like so. Okay, and then you're going to apply this over it, just like that. You want to press a little bit harder with your brush just to get that fabric laid down. Lift that one more time. Make sure it's completely. Okay, now let's go ahead and lay that down. Oh, my hands are going to be so sticky. Okay. All right, guys, so now you're just going to go ahead and again apply 6 to 8 coats. Bring it all the way to the edge. You want this to be really crisp feeling. Okay, so I'm going to come back. When I come back, this cup will have anywhere from 6 to 8 layers of Modge Podge. If you have a hard time keeping track of your Modge Podge, you can just get a little piece of sticky note paper and just create a little tallies, you know, and that can help you keep track of how many layers you've done. And that's kind of what I do, because sometimes when I have multiple cups going fabric cups, I'll just keep a little sheet next to each cup with a tally mark and just remind myself, oh, okay, I did 2 coats already, I did 4 coats, and so on and so forth. All right, guys, let me go ahead and finish this up, and then I will be back and we will work on the bottom portion of the tumbler. All right, guys. So while the fabric is drying on the tumbler, I'm gonna go ahead and just show really quickly what I do for the bottom portion of the tumbler. So I'm just gonna grab, like, pretty much I just grab scrap, and I just kind of want to roughly give a measurement on the bottom of the tumbler, and then I'll just cut a square off like that, so you know it's covered. And then what I do is I grab this is just from mailing labels. I just save these. You can probably use parchment paper or wax paper, and all I do is I just pour Modge Podge over this piece here, and then I'm just going to give it 2 good coats. Oops, I got a piece of chunk on the fabric there. Oops. And I'm going to do this 2 times. Again, we want it to get that plasticky feeling. And then we're going to go ahead and cut our circle once we do our 2 coats. So I just wanted to show this process really quick while we're waiting for the fabric to dry on the tumbler. Okay, so do this 2 times, and then I'll show you what we do when we how to cut it. Okay, so now that we have our layers of Modge Podge, we're going to concentrate on the bottom part of the tumbler. And so you have about either a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch of material that needs to kind of cover the edge of the tumbler. So I'm just going to take a pair of scissors, and I'm just going to make little slits. All around. Back on this one, bring it down a little bit more. Just making little slits all along the bottom of the tumbler. Okay, and then when you fold it in, it's going to give you a nice overlay. You want all of these to overlap each other and stuff. Pretty much along those lines. I just kind of press down. Just kind of helps bring it in. And then you have your bottom tumbler, and then you're going to cover it later on. We're going to cover it with our piece of fabric. Okay, so right now it's just to create half the coverage of your bottom portion of your cup, and then you just kind of want to just work with it. You get these little indents in here, and I just kind of push them. Let me see if I can find one to show you up close. I guess, I don't know if maybe you can see it. It's right here. I just kind of push and work that in. Okay. Then you're just going to take your Modge Podge and just go all underneath that whole area. Oops. And just a little on top. And then you're just going to start bringing it in. Get yourself nice coverage. Spread it out all underneath. Okay. And then just start working it in, pressing it down. It's a little messy, but being crafty is messy. sometimes. Just work those little edges into it. Kind of massaging it into those little creases that you... Let me grab my towel. It's getting a little messy. And you just kind of want to get it so it's tacky, and that's when it will start to stick. And then once it starts to get tacky and you see that your fabric is starting to lay flat, I like to just let it stand upright. Gives it pressure, helps it like smash the material down. So just make sure that you have a nice clean surface. I put it at a table, a different table in my office for this area, and I just make sure that that area is clean. And it's going to get covered, this portion is going to get covered anyways, so you won't be able to see it if you get like a little spot when you place it down. Then you won't start to feel those little rough edges. They start to smush down. Okay. Alright. Okay. So then once you get the way you want the bottom portion to be, I still see a couple of spots. I'm just going to place it flat down like that. And then let it dry. And then I'll go over it probably like a few more times. I'll do the whole thing about like maybe 2 more times. Make sure it's down. And then I'll show you how to apply this portion. Alright guys, we'll be back. Okay, so now that I've added a couple of layers of Modge Podge to the fabric, I'm now going to go ahead and concentrate on the bottom portion of the tumbler. I'll cut out a little fabric square, and I applied 2 coats of Modge Podge to this, so it is plasticky feeling and a little on the stiff side, which is what you want. I'm going to use my Cricut pink mat to hold the fabric in place. I'm just going to place it down, and I'm going to use my circle fabric cutter. If you're not sure of what size to make your bottom portion of your tumbler, I just get a piece of paper and I just kind of measure out the circle of the size that I want for my tumbler. So that's how I figure out the size for the bottom, because all tumblers are different sizes, obviously. So let me just go ahead. Oops, kind of move this gauge a little bit. Oh my goodness, I didn't lock it in place. Sorry guys. Okay. So bear with me on this. I'm still getting used to this whole process of using this thing. It's brand new for me. And pretty much you just go in a circle. You can use your Cricut if you want to make this, but I liked this utensil, just easy and quick. So I'm just trying to measure it out here. Yep, okay. I'm trying to make sure I get the cut. I don't know if it cut through or not. Oh, I did. I'm still getting used to it, so I didn't press hard enough here, but that's okay. I have a guideline anyways. Like I said, I'm still getting used to this fabric circle cutter. Okay, now you have your circle. You're going to go ahead and remove this. Sorry guys, let me get my tin here. Okay, sorry about that. And now you have your bottom portion of your tumbler. So now that you have it, I'm going to go ahead and just apply Modge Podge. Okay. And I'm just going to apply it like so. Just make sure it's really on there. And then just start applying Modge Podge over it to secure it. Like so. And then start bringing it over. And I'm going to do this. I've already gave this tumbler 4 coats. So this will be my 5th coat here. And then I'll do this probably like 2-3 more times. And it will be secure. I want to make sure that this is flat. Got my ugly crafting rag. And just like so, add Modge Podge, 5th coat. This is definitely a process. This is a tumbler that you will have to tell your customers, like, it can take up to a week to make. And I'll explain why. It's the icing that takes a while to dry. That's the longest portion, is waiting for that to dry, and then you can epoxy over it. So again, this isn't a quick tumbler to make. Definitely want to give yourself time. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let that dry, and I'm gonna apply probably about 3 more coats, and then we will now, after the 3 coats, I'll show you guys how we do the fun part, the icing. So while we're waiting for our fabric to dry on our tumbler, I want to go ahead and start working on the sprinkles. I hand make my sprinkles. I do know that some crafters like to just use real sprinkles, but I never went that route because I was worried that the dye could possibly bleed from the sprinkles. I've seen some crafters say that there was no bleeding, but I don't want to take the risk. And who doesn't want to work with clay? I love working with clay. I am going to use Sculpy clay. And you can pick any colors you want. I have a clay extruder, softener for the clay, because sometimes it can be a little bit hard to work with, so you want to soften it up. And these are what the sprinkles look like when you're done making them. You're going to bake them at 275 for 15 minutes. And I pretty much already started the process and have them softened. I think the blue one needs to be softened a little bit more. I like to use a clay extruder, even though I don't really care for this particular one. I don't even know what brand it is. I do want to invest in a better one. You can definitely roll it out if you want, thin it out, and then cut your sprinkle pieces. But I just like to look, I like the extruder just because it gives it, you get even size sprinkles. So let's just go ahead. It's already softened. You just kind of stick it in there. You're going to do this with every color. And like I said, this one's a little bit harder. I don't really care for this one. So you really have to press. And then you just kind of looks like spaghetti. See, don't care for this. It just really takes forever. Once you get your clay out from here, then you're going to go ahead and then you have to separate each individual string. It is definitely time consuming, but I just like the effect it gives. Makes it look realistic. So you can you can definitely buy the sprinkles if you want. This is just what I do. And I forgot a plastic knife to cut. I'm just going to use my razor blade for right now. Okay, so then, like I said, you have to individually, I have to sit down for this. You just kind of separate them. It's a little time consuming, but it relaxes me, so I'm not going to complain. And you're going to do this for every single color. Every single color. And then once you bake them and they're done baking, you let them cool off until they're completely cool. And then I just go with a pair of scissors and I just start cutting them into little sprinkle sizes. So that's pretty much all you do to make the sprinkles. Every single color. Don't want to keep this part of the tutorial too long. Just like so. Okay, you're gonna bake this for, I do all of mine at once, and then you bake it at 275 for 15 minutes, let them cool off, and then once I have that done, I'll go back and I'll show you how I create my sprinkles. All right, I'm back 45 minutes later. So all of them are baked. This is pretty much what they look like. Okay, they are a little flimsy, but that's okay. It's actually good when you cut them, and then they do harden as they sit in your container. So pretty much what I do is I work with 2 colors at a time and fill up my tray as much as I can, and then I'll bake that at 275 for 15 minutes. And while that's baking, I'll work on my next 2 colors, get that one ready, and then bake that. And then my last color, which is the one that I can't fit on, it bakes by itself. And so it takes about 45 minutes to make these sprinkles. Like I said, it's time consuming, but it's well worth it. And then all I do is let them cool off, and then once they're cooled off, I just grab a little handful and literally I just start cutting any size you want. That's all I do. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up these sprinkles, and then we will now move on to the fun part, which is the icing. All right, guys, I will be right back. Oh, let me just show you really quick how they look. There goes. They're so pretty. Okay. All right, everyone, now that we've completed the fabric portion of the tumbler, we're now going to move on to the ice cream part of the tumbler. This has 8 coats of Modge Podge. I'm not worried about the Modge Podge that's dried up here because it's going to get covered when we work on the ice cream. And what I use to create that ice cream drip melted effect is I use dimensional fabric paint. That's what I use, guys. It's awesome, right? Okay, so we're going to give it a good shake, and you're pretty much just going to freehand your ice cream drip. There's no wrong or right way to create an ice cream drip. So I like to start at the seam, and this is when I create the long drip along the seam, and you can take it as far down as you want to go. It's your ice cream. There's no wrong way to make an ice cream tumbler. So let's go ahead and get started. So you give your dimensional fabric paint a good shake, and you're going to freehand it. There's no wrong way. Now I will warn you that this does take quite a bit of puffy paint. You don't want to go too heavy on it. And you just fill it in. So this part of the tumbler, it is a little time consuming. This whole tumbler is time consuming. And this puffy paint is what gives it the gives it that dimensional look. Okay, and then now you're going to just start covering this whole seam area here. That's why earlier in the video I was like, don't worry about this ugly part, because you're not going to see it. And just kind of fill it. Fill it in. Okay, let me show you up close. And what I like about using the puffy paint is it gives it these little like dips and waves in there, and it gives it more of a melted ice cream effect. Make sure you're shaking in between use. And you want to cover the seam. This will take 72 hours to dry. Make sure you let it dry for 72 hours. I was impatient one time and I did not do that. And just when you think that it's dry, because there's like, you know, obviously this is puffy paint, and when you have like, let's just say like a hump or a glob of it and it looks dry, when you press down on it, it will like pop, and then you get the fabric paint everywhere. So it has to dry for 72 hours before applying your epoxy. Okay, and then you're going to take it all the way to the top. I try to leave a little bit of space. That's why if you're going to, whatever color you use, you want to try to give your cup a base coat color according to the color you're using of fabric paint. So for instance, if I wanted to make a strawberry one, I would use pink spray paint as close as I can get to match the color that I'm using, if that makes sense. It just helps with coverage. And then you're just going to go in. Again, this does take a good amount. And then once you apply all of your, once you apply throughout the whole cup, then we'll add the sprinkles. The ideas are endless with puffy paint now on tumblers. Yes. Okay. So I won't do the whole cup on this tutorial. I just wanted to show you how I apply it, and then I will come back and show you when it's all done, and then we'll go and add the sprinkles. So again, let me just show you a drip here that I work on, or how I do a drip. So you want to cover the seam, so you're just going to apply drip and fill it in. And let's add a little baby drip, and then we can get real crazy. Happy little drip. That looks yummy. It'll look even yummier when we add the sprinkles. Okay, and just fill it in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up this cup, and then once it's done, I will show you how it looks. I will be right back, guys. Okay, so now that I've went all the way around and applied the fabric paint, we're now going to add the sprinkles that we made earlier. And you want to add the sprinkles while it's still wet, and now you just sprinkle them on. You're gonna get some that stick up, like example, kind of like, I don't know if you guys can see how this one sprinkle is sticking up. You're gonna go back and you'll start pushing those down once you're done having fun sprinkling your ice cream. This part can be also a little bit time consuming as well. So you want to be careful how kind of missed one there. So I'm going to go back, grab my tweezer and just place it on there. And then I'll go back when they start to stick up. I don't know if you guys will be able to see how that one's sticking up. I just kind of push it in and make sure that's lying in the fabric paint and that these are kind of sticking to it. And just sprinkle, sprinkle. And get crazy with as much sprinkles as you want. Make sure you get them in the drips as well. Okay. Just sprinkle away. I am going to drop some sprinkles everywhere. I'm actually going to go this way. It's easier for me. There we go. That way I'm not touching the, or risking touching the drips on the bottom. Just go around and add all your sprinkles. Make sure you get them in the, oops. Sometimes it, oops. There we go. I'm trying to think an average on how many days it takes me to make one. We already know that we have to wait 72 hours for the fabric paint to dry. So that's already, what, 3 days? And plus we have to wait for the Modge Podge to dry. That can take a whole day in itself, maybe a day and a half. So that's already 4 days, plus your curing or applying epoxy and curing. I usually do about 2 coats, and that's, you want to, what, 72 hours for your cup to fully cure, depending on what epoxy you use. I use an epoxy that takes up to 72 hours to cure. So we're looking at almost a week to make an ice cream tumbler, for me at least. If anybody can do it faster, man, kudos to you. Jelly if you can. But this is how I make my ice cream tumblers. Oops. Sprinkles were really messy. Very messy. Okay, so I'm gonna go and apply the rest of my sprinkles, and once I'm done applying, see how this sprinkle is sticking up? I just fix it and push it down. So I will go back around and make sure that all the sprinkles throughout the tumbler are laying flat. All right, guys, I will be right back, and I will show you the final result after I finish adding the sprinkles. Okay, crafters, so here's the sprinkle application. Once I apply my sprinkles to the tumbler, I will then hit the tumbler with a heat gun and just like move the heat gun throughout the whole entire cup. This just helps the puffy paint settle onto the tumbler, and it also helps the sprinkles settle into the fabric paint. And then it just kind of gives it like a first, like it dries the first, like the top layer of the tumbler. And then unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for 72 hours before we can apply the epoxy to the tumbler. But this is what it looks like. Pretty neat. All right, guys, when I come back, it will be 72 hours and we will apply the epoxy. All right, we'll see you in a bit. All right, crafters, so we're back after 3 days of letting the puffy paint dry, and this is the final result of the dried puffy paint with the sprinkles added. So now it's time to go and add your epoxy. I am using art resin epoxy. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. I've already mixed it and it's ready to be poured. I usually add just 2 coats of epoxy, so I'll do the first coat, let it cure for 12 hours, and then I will do the next coat and then let that cure for for another 12 hours, and then we are all done. The whole point of this cup is for it to have dimension, so you will feel the sprinkles and you will feel the icing. That's the whole point of the cup. It's kind of a dimensional cup. So let's just go ahead and get started. It's the same thing as epoxying any tumbler that you would epoxy. So literally we're just going to start pouring on. And you just want to make sure that you're going to get in the grooves and every angle of your cup, especially where the sprinkles are at, because there's so many tiny little areas and grooves. So you want to make sure that you're getting everything covered. I did measure out 2 tablespoons of epoxy, which I believe is, let me check for you guys, it is 30 millimeters of epoxy measured. It usually doesn't take this much. I did make that amount, obviously, just in case if it does, but I also have a few other tumblers that need to be epoxied as well. So hopefully I have enough for those ones. If not, no big deal. So literally you're just going to go in all the grooves. You probably will have to get eye level. I know I do, to make sure that everything is covered. And that is pretty much it, you guys. There's nothing else to it. That's all it is. So again, I give these tumblers 2 coats of epoxy. 1 coat, let it cure for 12 hours, and then add the second coat, let it cure for another 12 hours. And that is it. You can always add another one if for some reason you missed a spot, no big deal. But it usually, for me, it takes 2 coats. You're all set. Obviously, you do want to pop any bubbles with your torch lighter. And that's pretty much it. Yes, so if you guys have any comments, or I'm sorry, any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them accordingly. Also, please visit the Creepsakes crafting page on Facebook. I will also do a live feed on the crafting page to answer any questions regarding this tumbler on the group. So if you join and you're looking for that live feed, it will be there if you find this video later on. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for the positive feedback when I first showed this tumbler. I hope this tutorial helped. If it did not, please let me know and I will do my best again to answer any questions that you may have. And that's pretty much it, guys. Take care and happy crafting.